Thank you so much. Welcome to all of you, and thank you. I wish we were together in person like we planned. We look forward to seeing all of you. We have friends here that we will be meeting with for the last time today, and we really want to express our appreciation to all of you for being here and for your service, both to your communities and to the Utah League of Cities and Towns. This is our Board of Directors meeting. Today is Wednesday, December 15th, 2021. My name is Dawn Ramsey. I get the privilege of serving as president of the league this year. I'm the mayor of South Jordan City, and I'm joined electronically by my esteemed colleagues from across the state. Due to a snow day, we decided to keep this entire meeting electronic. So thank you to all of you for being here with us. We also have our executive director, Cameron Deal, and his staff. We've got all of our administrative staff here with us. Thank you to all of you for being here. The first item that we have on the agenda, administrative item, is that we have minutes that were sent out from our November 15th, 2021 meeting. Has anybody had an opportunity to review those minutes, and would you like to make a motion on, or do you have any amendments to make?
Mayor Shepherd, I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we get a second?
I'll second Mayor Daines.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from our November 15th, 2021 meeting, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Those pass. Also, this is a call for you, any conflict of interest forms. If there's anything that's come up in your life since we met a month ago that could need to be reported as a conflict of interest, we ask you to please submit that. We have those forms. If anybody has anything they want to share, let me know. Otherwise, just you know how to fill out the forms, and if anything comes up, we just ask that you do that. Okay. All right. Item number 3, our board and commission report and appointments. We're going to turn it to Justin Lee, our Director of Government Relations.
Before you turn it over to Justin, can I just jump back on to the welcome and introductions to introduce 2 new staff members?
Yes, we're actually quite excited about that, and I didn't know for sure if they were here. I really would prefer to be in person today. Thank you to all of you, but yes, Cameron, please.
Perfect. I have one with me here in my office who I'll introduce, and then we have another who's online, and I'll have her introduce herself as well. So first I want to introduce Angela Adam.
Hi.
So Angela is now our operations coordinator, started last week, and we're very, very excited to have her. Just introduce yourself real quickly to the board.
Oh yeah, hi. I just started last week, like Cam said. I came from DCFS. I'm just really excited to be here, still learning the ropes, and excited to meet all of you again. I wish it was in person, but next month.
Well, and Mayor Ramsey, you'll be pleased to know.
I am a South Jordan through and through. Grew up there. I still live there, so.
Yeah, I'm excited to meet you too. I'm happy to know that. I had no idea. Thank you, and Angela, welcome. Thank you for coming to work with us at the league.
Thank you.
Perfect. So we're excited to have Angela as our new operations coordinator, and we're also excited that starting in 2022, we will have a deputy director. The deputy director will be Rachel Terry, and Rachel has joined us via Zoom as well today. Rachel, will you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Rachel Terry. I currently work in the civil rights litigation section at the Attorney General's office. I've been a litigator for 16 years, and in addition to litigating some big civil rights cases involving Title IX, involving universities and school districts, and even a failed bank, I have been involved in training and developing some procedures for risk management. And I am just really excited to join the league. It has such a tremendous reputation across the state, and I'm so excited to work with all the local officials. So thank you for welcoming me. I'm excited to meet you all in person sometime soon.
Rachel, welcome. Thank you so much for joining this team. I think it's a great relief to Cameron, and I know he's very confident in your abilities. He was really thrilled with how well things went and very impressed with you. And we just appreciate you joining us. Thanks for coming to be part of our team. We do great work. I think you'll be very impressed by those you meet. We've got good people working hard in their communities across Utah. So welcome.
Well, I just to add on to that, as I was trying to make this decision on the career change, I asked a lot of people I knew and state government, local government, lobbyists, a wide variety of industries, and repeatedly people had just the most positive things to say about the league, the work they do, how important it is, what a great job the staff and Cameron and Justin, everyone else is doing. So I think that speaks very highly of the league, and it was one of the reasons I really was excited to join. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. We look forward to meeting you in person as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. That's the latest and greatest on staffing. So now we can go back to Justin on boards and commissions and the like.
Great. Thank you.
I thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Cam. The update here is going to be very quick because there's really not much to update. The good news is with Angela joining and with Rachel joining, and we're going to have a little bit more bandwidth to look at some of the vacancies, anything that we may need to fill post-election. So stay tuned. We'll have more update on this one next month, but nothing we need to deal with today. So I will simply say happy holidays and Merry Christmas. We'll get through that item really quickly.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I've been able to pull this up on my phone. So Justin, it's up to, or I'm sorry, not Justin, Nick, I guess, Nick, it's up to you. If everybody would like the agenda up, great. Otherwise, you know, you can take it down and put us all together, whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter either way to me. Okay. Thank you. All right, next we're going to Mayor Silvestrini. He is first vice president this year, mayor of Mill Creek City, and he's going to talk to us about some appointments to the 2022 board of directors from the nominating committee.
Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. So I guess for some people, it's you know, a reward. They get to retire, and for other people, we regret that we're losing you as board members. But we have some vacancies as a result of the last election process, and we also need to replace our treasurer because Mayor Arvey from North Salt Lake has decided to retire. So, you know, when the nominating committee met at the annual meeting, we interviewed a number of candidates who are all very qualified, and we kind of made some mental notes anyway of who might be a person to serve if there in fact were midterm vacancies. So at this point, I would like to, I guess, nominate or suggest to the board that we appoint the following people to fill some vacancies. So first of all, we need a town representative on the board. And I haven't actually talked to Mayor Mike Leonhard from Garden City, but I understand staff has, and that he's willing to serve as the town representative for the league. And then from Area 6, just to have geographic representation, we make sure we have a board member from each of the areas that we've divided the league into. And Council Member Mary Winch from Manti has indicated that she's amenable to serve as Area 6 representative. And then the other two are at-large representatives to replace those who are no longer going to be able to serve because they're not in elected office. And we interviewed Mayor-elect Tammy Tran. She's been a council member in Kaysville, and you know, frankly, I thought she interviewed well as a rock star, and we just felt that she would be next up, basically. And then another person in that category also is Ogden Council Member Marsha White. And I have contacted both Mayor-elect Tran and Marsha White and asked if they would be willing to serve, and they both indicated they would. I don't know if Marsha's on the call. I know that Mayor-elect Tran had her father-in-law passed away, so she was going to attend, but she's not able to do that because of the snowstorm and that family matter. So anyway, I would put those 4 names into nomination. I don't know if you want me to cover the treasurer thing now as well, or I can do that in a minute. Okay, I'll go ahead and do that.
Board members first.
Yeah, do you want to vote on that first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Mayor. We've got a nomination of Mayor Mike Lenhart from Garden City, Councilwoman Mary Winch from Manti, Tammy Tran, who's the mayor-elect and a current council member in Kaysville, and Marsha White, a council member from Ogden, who have been nominated to serve on the board. That's a motion by Mayor Silvestrini.
Can we have a little discussion before we go to motion?
Yeah, I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask for a motion and then open to discussion, but let's go ahead and talk about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Emily, did you want to go first?
I just wanted to say that I have been so lucky to be on the board, and I know that Logan, the next mayor of Blanding, is going to replace my seat for the region. I just wondered if there was any other candidate at all from my region of consideration, and really anything on the other side of 6 all the way down to Mexican Hat.
I'm
Highway
going to let
6.
staff answer that, because I know that with respect to Region 6, we actually had some difficulty finding somebody. Cameron or Nick, you want to talk about that?
Yes, so we did not have anyone else apply from Area 8. Area 6, we did have some struggles trying to get interested candidates. We were working with Mayor Castleton, who had sent out some stuff to the mayors in the area and didn't get any bites back. But we did some outreach out there, and Councilmember Winch from Manti jumped to the front of who was interested.
Mayor Niehaus, one other thing I'll add is after we had closed our application process, Mayor Van Wagner from Castledale also reached out, but by then we'd already moved through our process. We did our regional trainings this past Saturday, and we had standing room only in Ephraim, and we had a handful in Blanding. There's a lot of turnover statewide, but particularly in those areas. And so part of our discussion internally has been we're losing a lot of Emily Niehauses of the world, and so we need to get out and build connections with a lot of the new people. So we've checked all of the boxes geographically, but in the spring we'll be doing more of that outreach. And
Well,
then Mayor Van Wagner is very interested in engaging at a higher level with the league from Castledale.
Well, and I suggest reaching out to, like, I know that Logan will be our region, but without at-large board seats available, it might be worth it to reach back out to Moab City, the new mayor, and council members from Moab City. I would definitely be, I guess it'll be too late for me to officially nominate, but I do think that there could be a really good representative from down in this neck of the desert.
I have a similar concern. This seems like it's a great list of candidates, and it makes sense to pull from the last applicants, but I think there are people that probably would put in if they knew some of these regions had opened up. And my concern is there is no representative now from the Wasatch Back at all, which is a significant area. And I think we cover our region, but that's because it's all, I think, a vineyard, which isn't really anything to do with the Wasatch Back resort economies. And so I think that leaves kind of a big hole in the board to not represent the whole northeastern side of Utah.
So we will have Mayor Lenhart from Garden City, so a different type of resort community, but is a resort community. But you're right, there won't be anybody from the Wasatch Back. We did not have any applicants from the Wasatch Back, and as you know, there's a lot of turnover in the communities on the Wasatch Back. So Mayor Ramsey and Mayor Silvestrini, the options are to accept the candidates that we've discussed, or if you choose not to accept the candidates or a candidate that we've discussed to keep a vacancy open, then we would have a vacancy that we would consider filling. All of these vacancies go through September. So there would be, certainly there will be quite a few openings this coming September.
I think it would be important to open it. This is my way to open it. At least send an email out to different individuals to our, your email list, and say that there are these vacancies and see if there is interest, just like the others have said. At the time of the convention, a lot of people were in the middle of an election and didn't know if they would get it or wouldn't get it. So
they probably weren't necessarily at that point thinking about applying for the board. But now if they have got their seat, then they could be an asset and we could be missing a lot of great individuals.
I'm going to defer to Mayor Silvestrini first, unless anybody else, if you want to.
Well, I'll say this,
Chime in.
Ramsey, is that you know, I can't speak to the town representative and the area six representatives, and staff talked to them, but I am recommending Mayor-elect Tran and Councilmember Marsha White. Marsha was on the board previously, and you know, these are individuals that were interviewed by the nominating committee and just barely missed that cut. So I have full confidence that they, number one, they want to serve. They put their hat in. I confirmed with both of them that they're still willing to serve if they're elected. And, you know, I think getting the positions filled now, and I agree with what's been said with respect to representation of resort communities and the Wasatch Back. But I think we can look to that to do that when we have additional vacancies.
Okay, so Mayor Silvestrini would like to still put forth Mayor-elect Tran and Councilmember White as names. I mean, really, unless anybody else has strong feelings about it, I'm open to a motion, and let's discuss the motion. And whether those names include Mayor Lenhart and Mary Winch or not is open to whoever makes the motion.
Well, Mayor Ramsey, the town rep and area 6 rep, we have to fill those with those specific requirements. So to me,
those aren't options.
If you want to separate the at-large from the two, then you can do that.
What would that motion look like, Cam?
So if someone would just make a motion to approve the town representative and approve the Region 6 representative, and then you could have the discussion on the at-large positions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well,
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to divide this up so we can have a further discussion if people want to do it. I will first move to nominate Mike Lenhart for the town representative and Councilmember Mary Winch for the Area 6 representative.
All right.
Second that, Mayor Niehaus.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion regarding those two? We didn't have anybody else in Area 6 or in the towns on the list, right?
That's my understanding, Mayor, and I think that the staff actually recruited people that we had. There was someone who had indicated interested in representing Area 6, and then they withdrew. So we only have that one person.
Okay. Okay, and just a reminder that Mike Lenhart is from Garden City. He's the mayor of Garden City up north, and Mary Winch is a council member in Manti, right? Okay. All right, any discussion on that motion? I'm trying to scroll between the pages, so you can either like turn on your camera and give me a wave or just say something.
Is that the vote?
Can I ask one question? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Who is, which one of them is replacing me?
So Mayor Wilson, in other words, I'll take that. You're in an at-large seat. So Mayor Randall has the area seat for Southwestern Utah. So you're in an at-large seat. So the way the board is constructed, as a quick reminder, we have 21 mayors and council members. 1 has to be a town, 2 have to be from big cities. They can overlap with other board members. So there's nobody, like Mayor Mendenhall is not the designated big city person, nor is Mayor Kafusi the designated big city person. But we always have to have at least 2 who represent cities of the first and second class. Okay, we have several, and we satisfy that requirement. The town representative can be both the town representative and a region representative. That's how Mayor Castleton was serving on the board. He checked both boxes. In this case, Mayor Lenhart would actually be the second representative from Northern Utah, because Mayor Daines already represents Region 1 as the mayor of Logan. So we would have a second person representing the top of Utah. So when you ask the question of who's who's replacing you. It's not as easy to say it goes from this person to this person, unless you are the only person in a geographic region like Mayor Niehaus, in which case Mayor-elect Monson is replacing her to make sure we fill the geographic requirement.
That goes back to my slight concern about wanting to open it up and see if we could get some people. And I mean, and it would be for the two at-large ones, which I know are the ones that they want, but just to get some more representation from more than the Wasatch Front area. Because it, again, when you look through the board, you have like one person, you have Mayor Randall, but that is basically all you have down in this area of the state at all now on your board.
Yeah, so Mayor Ramsey, just one other quick note here. And that is correct. If you approve the slate that Mayor Silvestrini has brought forward, keep in mind at-larges can come from anywhere in the state. And when the league expanded the board from 16 to 21 4 years ago, all 5 of those new spots were at-large spots. And roughly speaking, the way that, well, not roughly speaking, exactly speaking, 4 of the 5 of the at-larges since that time have been urban, and 1 has been off Wasatch Front. And as a reminder, Mayor Lenhart from Garden City would be the 2nd representative from the top of Utah off the Wasatch Front. So the balance of the at-larges is actually still the same. It's just that Mayor Lenhart would be from Garden City, as opposed to having the additional non-Wasatch Front person being from Southern Utah. In terms of the Wasatch Back, yeah, that's a separate issue. There's not, as Andy said, there's not a designated spot on the board for the Wasatch Back. Wasatch Back is included in the region with Utah County because our regions follow the associations of government boundaries, and the Mountain Land Associations of Government includes Utah County, Summit County, and Wasatch County.
That's helpful information. I didn't realize that was where Summit County fit, and I didn't realize that was why.
Mayor Ramsey, you do have a motion on the table.
Yes, we do. And so I'm going to ask if there's any additional discussion to the motion specifically, which, as a reminder, is for Mayor Lenhart of Garden City to represent towns, and Mary Winch of the Manti City Council to represent Area 6. If there's no additional discussion, I'll call for a vote.
I do have one question. So the mayor from Garden City will fill 2 roles, not only representing the small town, but also a member at large representing off of the Wasatch Front.
Correct. Correct.
All right.
Because Region 1 already has a spot, and that's Virginia's.
Okay, good question, Carrie. Thank you. Any additional questions or discussions? I'm trying to scroll back between the couple pages of you I don't want to miss anybody.
Mayor Ramsey, question. So would then we need to do a second motion for the remaining 2 seats, or is it just implied that the staff will advertise and then at the next board meeting, there would be action on those 2 remaining seats?
We've separated it. It would be a separate motion. So this is only for the town's representative in Area 6.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's no additional discussion, all in favor of approving this motion that's on the table, please say aye.
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 Anyone who's opposed, please say no. Okay. That motion passes, and so we will welcome Mayor Lenhart and Councilwoman Winch to our lead board. And now we have the 2 at-large seats. We have 2 people who have been nominated, and I'm going to open this up and see if there's a motion. Either way.
I just want to reiterate, I think we've heard from a number of folks concerns about regions not being represented. So I'm hoping we'll consider opening this up to see who else might apply. And certainly it sounds like Mayor Tran is excellent. And I got to serve with Council Member Marcia White and was sad to see her not back on the board. So it has nothing to do with their capabilities or qualifications. And maybe they wouldn't need to interview again, but I'd love to see it opened up to see if some of these other regions feel they need to be represented and you get good candidates.
You're welcome to make that a motion if you'd like.
The only
If no
thing
one
you
has
have
further
right,
discussion.
the only thing you have right now is a recommendation from the selection committee.
Right. So we can have a motion to accept the nominations from the selection, or the recommendations, excuse me, from the selection committee, or we can have a motion to.
So
Open
Mayor
up.
Ramsey, just from a staff perspective, I want to make sure we're clear on what's being asked here. So with the vote you just did, we have the same number of representatives off the Wasatch Front starting in 2022 than we did in 2021. Now we don't have, the Wasatch Back, I'm putting in a separate category because we're losing Wasatch Back representation that hasn't been filled. But outside of that, we have the same number. Now, I believe we did. Nick, did we advertise at Friday Facts the board vacancies?
I would have to double check with Susan, but I believe so.
Right. And when Marissa Westrini ran the nominations committee, one of the conversations he had with the nominations committee was kind of highlight who you would recommend to fill the board if board vacancies occurred. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, do you want us to spend staff time looking for more people from specific areas of the state? Do you just want us to open it up again, recognizing that the two candidates before you still may be the two candidates that come before you? The process for the league is that Marissa Westrini, as the chair of the nominations committee, brings forward recommendations. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear on what the direction to staff should be.
Yeah, and I suppose that would
Ramsey, you've got your
require,
hand up.
I suppose that in fairness would require that nomination committee to have to come together again and meet to consider any other applicants. And these two applicants, like Mayor Bierman pointed out, Marcia was on the board. It was a tough call for us with respect to not reappointing her. We did that, frankly, to try to get better geographic representation and also, some new people in. But we also recognized that they were qualified and had an eye on what might happen if there were vacancies. So.
Mayor Ramsey, it looks like we have a hand up from Councilmember Bradshaw.
Thank you. Kate, go ahead.
I wanted to, new to the board and appreciate that I went through the process and that the committee selected. And so I weigh in with that, frame of being, very new to joining this group, but did want to advocate for Mayor-elect Tran, in particular in Kaysville. I have worked with her on a number of different issues. We serve on a board together, and I have found her to just be incredibly sharp, very capable. I think she also adds, an interesting diversity to the group, given her, her ethnic background as well, that I think is intriguing in the representation that we may want to consider as well. I don't know Councilor White very well from Ogden, only by reputation, but wanted to chime in that I'm incredibly impressed with Tammy Tran and think she would add a lot to this group in particular.
Thank you, Kate. Anyone else?
I'd reiterate that I've served with both of these folks for quite some time, both with Mayor-elect Tran and with Marcia White for years. And both, obviously, Marcia's been on the board before, but both extremely qualified candidates. I don't know that we'd find a whole lot better, but.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that and double down a little bit. Keep in mind, I agree that they are very qualified, but part of the strength of this board is its diversity of perspectives, and having people from different sizes of towns spread out across the state, different sort of sections is really important. And that's what I'm getting at here is I think the geographic representation is absolutely critical. We have a lot of smart people and experienced people on this board, but we won't necessarily have all the perspectives we need if we don't spread out across the state and we go heavy on the Wasatch Front.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that is a good point and a point well taken. I do think that's why this has been organized to have the representation that we have. I think it has been an effort that's been in place for quite some time to have a diverse representation and make sure every area is represented. And having the Wasatch Back be part of the Mountainlands Association means, I don't know, you may have to, look for somebody who wants to put their name in from the Wasatch Back, because it sounds like there's Utah County representation for Summit County. That's how it's put together. That's interesting, and wasn't, as I said before, something that I knew before. But that being the case, I think the way that we're structured is really to bring that diversity to this board from across the state, towns and cities in different areas. Either way, if there's no other comments, I'm going to ask if there is a motion regarding these two at-large seats and the nomination the recommendation that's come from the nominating committee.
Miriam, one more quick comment, just that I think it wouldn't hurt to just put this to the next board meeting, have staff advertise, have the nominating committee meet just before the next board meeting, and leave it to the members of this board to bring forth any suggestions for people, or push people to apply. So it's just holding off for 1 month. I think that would then not put a lot of strain on staff. You wouldn't have to do that much more hustle. The nominating committee could just meet one more time. The two applicants are already there. And so that would, I think that seems like the least painful and probably most most balanced.
If you'd like to make that motion, Mayor Niehaus, if you'd like to make that a motion, I will accept that as a motion.
Yes, I'll move to do that.
Okay. So I think the motion is to table this for 1 month and to ask the staff to send out an email to
table for 1 month, have staff advertise in the nominating committee meet once to bring back to the board nominations.
Okay.
Can I ask one question on that? Can you wait to send it out until after like January 3rd or whatever day it is that the new individuals get sworn in? Because I know, like down here, sorry, you have my kid crying in the background. Like what email account is being used, but between now and then is chaotic with the new people and our current existing ones. And so if you could wait just until the new bunch is sworn in and make sure you have all the correct email addresses, I think that would make it a lot better than rushing and sending an email out right now when people are trying to get into Christmas and not paying quite as much attention.
Cameron, can you tell me I don't know the date of our next board meeting, our January.
The date of the next board meeting is local officials day.
On the 19th.
Yeah, and so Roger, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can have a new nominating commission. These are interim appointments. And that really falls within the chair's prerogative, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
I mean, in effect, the recommendations have been made. You can delay them a month, but essentially the same people are making the same recommendations.
Yeah, that's right. So the chair of the nominations committee is who brings recommendations for interim. So, not to put all the weight on the shoulders of Mayor Silvestrini And in light of the fact we still have to get through our audit and retail incentives, and it's 12:41, I'm fine with tabling so long as everyone is clear of the process. The chair of the nominations committee has the discretion based on what the nominations committee did in September, and they did talk about what to do if there were going to be vacancies. And so I just don't want us to be creating a process on the fly.
Yeah. The process is set out. It met. If you don't like that, that's fine. Have a vote on that. But the process is going to be the same. It's going to fall back from there, self-screening.
Okay, with that in mind, we have a motion. Is there a second to that or anything different?
Well, it sounds like we might need to modify that motion based on what Roger. and
I
Kim
think my
said.
simple motion is motion to table till the next meeting.
This is Kate. I'll second. I think we do need to move to the audit and the retail incentives because that's a very heavy topic.
Very heavy topic and it's going to be time consuming. Okay, so we have a motion to table this until the next meeting. The process has been spelled out. To table this, and we have a second. Any discussion to that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of tabling this till our meeting in January, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
I'm opposed.
Okay,
No.
I need to know who is opposed. I have Mayor Caldwell and Mayor Randall and Mayor Silvestrini
And Dane Smith.
and Mayor Daines,
Mayor Shepherd.
Shepherd
Clint Smith.
and Clint Smith. Did I get everyone who opposed? Caldwell, Randall, Silvestrini, Daines, Shepherd, and Smith. Okay, now I'm gonna ask who's an aye then. We have, yeah, if you put your hands up, that would be helpful. You know how it is. We did all this Zoom for so long, but this is a little bit tricky, so I'm just trying to see everyone. So we have, for the ayes, we have Bradshaw, Miley, Jessica, Andy,
Carrie.
Mayor Kafusi, Tani. Did I hear Carrie?
Yes, I'm at the league offices now.
Dustin, Carrie, Emily. Okay. The ayes have it. Is there okay, but now Roger, this goes back to our, is it majority rules on a vote like this?
Yes, it's a majority rules on the vote like this.
Okay,
So you got a quorum.
okay, so the ayes have it, so this will be tabled until January. Okay. All right, thank you everyone for this discussion. We will come back to this. And now, I'm pulling up my dark phone and getting the back. We're going to our audit. We have our.
President Ramsey, can I jump in really quick?
Please.
Can I take a little bit of post-executive privilege?
Yes, I was going to do this at the end, but if you'd like to do it now, you're welcome.
No,
to.
before they have to go, everybody's busy and everything else. I really want to thank, as the past president of the league, Emily Niehaus, Annie Bierman, Nick Castleton, Clint Smith, Len Arvey, and Maylee Wilson-Edwards for their service to the board. Can we all just say thank you so much for everything you've given to this? Give them a round of applause. And you've been amazing. We really appreciate everything that you've done and what you brought to the league. And it's been an honor to serve with all of you. And I just wanted to say that before we move into the weeds and the minutia and everything else. But I just want to thank you for everything that you've done. And it really means a lot. And we're going to miss you all.
Thank you, Mayor Caldwell. I did plan to do that at the end, but you're right. People have to jump off sometimes and we want to get through this. And that's really as above and beyond all of the important things to discuss today, that matters the most. We're losing some great people on this board and we look forward to being friends with you forever and just appreciate your service to the league and to your communities, to the state of Utah. You're exceptional people. Thank you. Mayor Caldwell, thank you. Anyone else have anything they wanted to add?
No, Emily's got great recommendations for restaurants in Moab. If anybody gets down there, they're amazing. I haven't had that same thing from Andy yet. I'll look forward to that in the future, but we were down there a couple weeks ago and she gave us the most amazing Thai food recommendation ever. And it was awesome. So Emily, we'll miss having you on this and your energy and everything else. And I just have really appreciated being able to serve with you all in the last couple of years. So thank you all very much. And that's my end of post-executive privilege, and I'll leave it back to the detail people.
Thank you, Mayor Caldwell. Thank you. All right. To our financial audit. We have our fiscal year 2021 financial audit. Is it Heidi? Is that how you say the name? I don't want to get the name wrong. I apologize if I do.
It's Ide Bailey.
Ide Bailey. Ide, thank you. Okay, Ide is how you say the name. And I just always feel bad wrecking somebody's name, so I apologize for that. So anyway, we're going to turn the time over and have you go through our financial audit.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Mike Mickelson. I'm the audit partner with Ide Bailey. Somewhere in the various screens, we also have with us Jeremy Wilkie, who is the audit senior manager on the engagement. We have dated our reports December 10th, and we provided those to Nick. I think what you might have in your packets is the draft that was ready Friday, but I'm not sure which ones you got.
We did get the final copy out to the folks in their packets.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. I can show my screen, or you can flip through it if you want. So this is our auditor's report. It's on the third page of the PDF, page 1 of the financial statements. Down in the auditor's responsibility section, it talks about what we're required to do under audit standards, and that is gain an understanding and document our understanding of internal control, establish a materiality threshold and assess risk related to the different types of transactions and financial statement line items and disclosures that we'll audit. We do all that as part of our planning process for the audit. Materiality threshold is the threshold that we believe will change a financial statement user's judgment. So a misstatement above that threshold would change a reader's judgment, and a misstatement below that threshold won't. And so we could probably pass on a misstatement below that threshold because it wouldn't change a user's judgment. So after we do those three things in planning, we design our audit procedures, and then we perform them, gather our audit evidence, and determine our auditor's opinion. And this year, again, we've issued an unmodified opinion that states that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in relation to generally accepted accounting principles. And that's the opinion there at the bottom of page 1. There's a few additional paragraphs on page 2, which I've just scrolled to. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board requires some additional required supplementary information to accompany the financial statements. So immediately following our auditor's report is a management's discussion and analysis. Then following the footnotes are some required supplemental schedules related to pensions that are required as required supplementary information. The paragraph here at the top of page 2 states that we do not issue an audit opinion on that required supplemental information. We make some inquiries and compare it to the information we were provided during the audit, but we do not issue an opinion on that information. The other information section deals with some information that follows the required supplementary information at the end. It's supplementary. Management wants to include it. In relation to that information, we provide what's called an in relation opinion. And so we tie those schedules out to the audited financial statements and to the other information that we've audited. And we issue an opinion that says that those schedules are fairly stated in relation to the financial statements as a whole. And the final paragraph there refers to government auditing standards. By statute in Utah, any government entity that's audited is required to, the auditor is also required to follow a second set of auditing standards established by the Comptroller General of the United States, known as government auditing standards. And those standards require additional report. And so that paragraph at the end of our auditor's report lets financial statement readers know that we followed that set of standards and we have issued that additional report. So the next thing I want to talk about is that report. So I'm going to jump to page 35, and for some reason, can you see that? Or is it blank for you too? Okay. I don't know why it's blank. Anyway, so we've issued that report. It's broken up into a couple of different sections. One related to, compliance, and one related to internal control over compliance. So the section related to compliance, we did not note any non-compliance with laws or regulations, and so we did not report any. And then the second section related to the internal control over compliance, we did not note any internal control deficiencies related to that either. So yeah, my page 35 is still blank on what I'm trying to share. So if you have that, you can turn to those pages if you want to read that. But it's an unmodified opinion.
Like what numbered page is that? I can share it in our packet.
It's numbered 35. It's 37 of the PDF. Okay, so I don't know what mine's doing. I don't know why it's blank on my end, but that's the one I was, actually that's the state compliance that I was going to get to next. I guess I'm off a page or two. So this is the government auditing standards report, talks about internal control over financial reporting. Okay, so I was wrong a minute ago because I couldn't read it. So this report talks about, requires us to disclose any internal control deficiencies over financial reporting. And so we did have one this year. It was a carry forward of the comment from last year. As you recall, last year we had material weakness in internal control related to unearned revenue and calculating unearned revenue. And because we didn't do our audit until the current fiscal year had started, that kind of carried forward into this year. And then additionally, at the end of the year, we had some additional audit adjustments to that. So if you scroll down a couple of paragraphs, Nick, there should be a reference there. There it is. At the bottom of the page there, the bottom of that last paragraph, finding 2021-001, that's where we've carried forward that finding from last year in relation to the audit adjustments this year and to the fact that the beginning of the year that hadn't been corrected until we finished our previous audit December a year ago. If you'll scroll down to 35, page 35 now. Oh, actually, let's stop here. This is the second part of the government auditing standards report that does talk about compliance, as I mentioned before, and there were no instances of non-compliance. There will be a response to the finding in the schedule of findings and responses, and we did not audit management's finding. All right, now scroll down to page 35, please. This is the report that's required by the state compliance audit guide. The state auditor in Utah publishes an audit guide for auditors to follow that has specific compliance requirements in areas that they're interested in having auditors report on. In the current year, we looked at budgetary compliance, your fund balance, and the fraud risk assessment. There's multiple chapters in the audit guide. One chapter is items to be tested every year, which is where these three items come from. There's a second chapter for items to be tested once every 3 years. And because many of those were tested last year and the year before, we did not test anything out of chapter 2. So those are the three areas we tested this year. As you scroll through and look at that report, we did not have any instances of non-compliance with those 3 compliance requirements. Additionally, there were no internal control issues related to that. On the next page, it'll talk about internal control over compliance, and there was no internal control problems related to compliance. So after that is the finding that we've already mentioned. So in the interest of time, we issued a second letter that I'm going to have Jeremy discuss, and after that, we will be open to questions. So Jeremy, will you talk about the required communications in our other letter?
Well, and I'll steal the, can I steal the screen share from you there, Nick? Thank you. Okay, make sure I grab pen. Perfect. Okay, so this letter is a letter that we're required to present to essentially the board. It really is meant to hit the highlights of the audit. And so some of these things Mike has already discussed, which is, our responsibility for the audit. On page 2 of the letter here, I'm going to hit just a few of these highlights and not go through everything, but just to note here, there were no new accounting standards adopted during the year. So there's nothing to really inform you about there. No significant changes to how the accounting is addressed. And then as far as we're required to point out significant accounting estimates in the financial statements, the one we consider to be a major estimate, which is going to be the same for all the cities and towns you're involved with, is the pension liability and the pension asset. And just to highlight how significant that can be, that can swing. Last year, the league had a net pension liability of about $200,000. This year, with all the changes of assumptions that URS has put into place with their actuary, now there's a net pension asset of like $660,000. So that just highlights that it is very subject to swings and change, and it is a large estimate. So we also point that out that the footnote related to that pension and all the details that go into that is significant to the league. Then we have this section here that talks about these uncorrected and corrected misstatements. These are just adjustments in the numbers that we've identified during the audit process. Most of these were relatively minor, but they're listed here. I've talked with the team about these, and those have been recorded and booked. And so we won't go through all the details of those. And then this part here discusses our uncorrected misstatements, which it's basically pointing out that there were a couple of other smaller ones that technically should have been recorded, but we weren't required to because they weren't considered material. And so essentially they were passed on. They didn't get reflected in the final numbers for the league because they weren't significant. And that is really it as far as the letter goes, but I just wanted to thank you for being able to work with you. Working with Nick and Dave is very great. They're very helpful, very open to any questions we have, and very responsive. So we appreciate all their time, efforts on working with us and just doing a good job in general with all the accounting for the league. So thank you. And you can let us know if you have any questions on anything.
Thanks, Jeremy. So we went through that kind of fast, but we knew you were behind on your agenda, and we would be happy to answer any questions that we may not have addressed.
Thank you, both of you, Michael and Jeremy. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the audit for them? Okay, seeing none, I can't see any. So just pipe up if you have one, because I don't see anybody waving their hand.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, I think this is my 7th or 8th audit I've gone through for the ULCT, and I think this is by far the cleanest. Even our really good years, we've had some little blips. So I just want to congratulate the staff for the good work getting us to this point. Awesome. And we've seen some bad ones too. So this one looked great.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mayor Bierman. That was a great comment. Thank you.
And we'll echo that. So it went very well this year. We appreciate the help of Nick and David and everyone that helped.
That is good news. That's what we like to hear. Thank you to all of you. Credit to all of you. Thank you to the staff. That being the case, can I get a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 audit?
So moved, Jeff Silvestrine.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion to this? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that audit is approved unanimously. Thank you. Again, thank you to the auditors and thank you to the staff for your excellent work. All right.
You're welcome.
Mayor Ramsey, who did we have as the second there? I'm sorry.
It was Mayor White. It was, I think so. Because Mayor Caldwell raised his hand, but I think Dustin White did. Is that right, Dustin?
That's correct.
I'll feel back. We're good. I was on mute.
Okay. All right, we'll give that one to Dustin, but thank you. All right, item 6, we're going to turn it over to Cam, talk about advocacy, engagement, and outreach. There's a lot to go over, so Cam, take it away.
Perfect. The next 10 hours is going to be on these topics. The intent of putting everything on the board agenda was to scare you that we'd be spending 10 hours, but in actuality, the second half of the list was really to set the stage for the January conversation as we go into the session. So the primary focus here is going to be on the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. And then we're going to take essentially 5 minutes to do the first 2 big bullet points on the communication plan during the session and outreach request. So Justin, can you take a quick second and hit the communication plan during the legislative session? And then Susan, I'll let you do inauguration and then we'll jump into UEOC.
Yes, hold on one second. Let me grab it. So the plan is, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, I was running through these other notes. So we will have, as we mentioned the other day, for a couple of things I want to give the picture. We will have LPC running on Mondays at noon. And so look forward to that. That's where we'll be bringing a lot of information. We will also be circling up on Thursday. Oh, no, sorry. Carson, which day did we decide on the board one? I think I'm confusing 2 meetings here in my head.
Yeah, we'll be doing the officer call on Thursday mornings, and then we'll have the kitchen cabinet call with the governor's staff. That'll be still on Tuesday mornings. So
on Tuesday mornings, those are the.
So I often get asked from board members, how do we engage during the session? And the answer is through LPC and then through the officers, because we do these regular check-ins with the officers. As necessary, we can hold board meetings, but it's really quite rare because we already have LPC. We have those regular check-ins with officers.
The other thing, just so you're aware, we'll be working with the city managers. We're going to be having a check-in call with them on Friday afternoons. Probably that's not set in stone. And then there's a couple other ones, but so plenty of opportunities to check in during the session. As everybody knows, it gets fast and furious. So you also have our contact numbers. So never feel free, or always feel free. Never hesitate to reach out if there's issues going out. Don't feel like you have to wait for a meeting to talk with us something as well.
Justin, actually, what's the session?
We do session, so Tuesday the 18th is when session starts. Or did you say what's the session?
Yeah, what is the session? I don't know what you're talking about.
So we're going to take the next 10 hours and do legislative 101. This from Mayor Caldwell.
Just kidding.
That was almost funny.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. Susan, can you quickly pitch Inauguration Day?
Yes, a couple of years ago, after the municipal election, our staff spread out far and wide and tried to get photos of all the inaugurations that we could. Well, we're going to do that again, but we need to know what date and those inaugurations and what time they're going to be held at. So we're going to be sending out an email to clerks and recorders this afternoon, asking for that information, a very, very short survey through Qualtrics. We'll also have that link in Friday Facts. So if you wouldn't mind just taking this very, very short survey to tell us where and when your inauguration is going to be, or if we can't be there, then just send us pictures or ask your team to send in pictures. Then we'll make a little photo album of all of our next inaugurations. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan. And the last piece on the outreach is that we ask for your help to build the calendar for 2022 of conferences of mayors meetings around the state and COG meetings around the state, so that we can get out, meet newly elected mayors and council members. We had about 170 at the newly elected training, elected officials essentials training this past Saturday. We'll have another 100 plus in January, but we just ask for your help to coordinate who the chairs are and what those calendars are. And so Angela and our team will be aggregating that information. We'll have that link in the follow-up board email as well. So any questions about the engagement and outreach plan for the next few months? Okay. Then Mayor Ramsey, I am going to just quickly hit billboards before we do ULCT. We listed 5 minutes. I hope this can be 1 minute. Most of you remember the big billboard battle we had last year at the Capitol. We successfully fought off preemption legislation. Part of the reason we were successful was because we committed to the bill sponsor, Senator Scott Sandell, that we as a league in Salt Lake City in particular would meet with the outdoor advertising industry to try to tackle specific policy issues that were better addressed locally rather than in state law. To the credit of Salt Lake City, they actually did that outreach within minutes of that vote in the Senate, and then have been meeting one-on-one with the outdoor advertising industry, and then brought together a larger stakeholder group a few weeks ago, including me. What we discussed with the outdoor advertising industry are the 4 policy items that are listed in your board packet. But we're nervous about the session, they're nervous about the session. And so what they've asked of us and what we as staff are recommending is that we stand shoulder to shoulder with the outdoor advertising industry in the 2022 session to push back against any bills that could come forward, whether they benefit cities or not, so as to create that good faith space for deliberation on the policy items that we listed in your packet. There's no predetermined outcome of what those policy items are going to result in, but I think it sends a sign of good faith to the legislature and to the other stakeholders that we'll have the right people in the room for the next few months talking through these issues locally, and we stand together to oppose any bills, even if they were to benefit us. So Mayor Mendenhall, Mayor Silvestrini, anything either you want to add, since both of you have been on the front line of billboard issues recently?
I'll just say, I think it'd be a far more relaxing session if we don't have to have any billboard legislation. So I'm supportive of that. Cameron didn't say it, but Mill Creek's had some substantial negotiations with advertising industry as well, and we're able to reach an agreement to remove at least 1 billboard and convert it to digital with some benefit to the city. So I'm hopeful that we can maybe not have to focus on that. It can focus on other things that are going to keep us busy. So
I'll just add that I think of the Johnny Cash song, "Don't Take Your Guns to Town, Son." We've been in a standoff with the industry session after session for decades probably, and it's been astonishingly productive and collaborative. So thanks, Cam, also for the league's participation in these conversations. We're hopeful, and I think that in the coming year we'll be seeing some good progress that hopefully will change the nature of future legislative sessions, at least for a while.
Thank you, Mayor. So Mayor Ramsey, I'd welcome a motion on what I just described, that we would oppose any bills, billboard related bills. Actually, let me be very clear that we would stand shoulder to shoulder with the outdoor advertising industry to oppose any bills this session to create that space for the good faith deliberation, regardless whether they benefit us or benefit the industry. And we're expecting the same thing from the outdoor advertising industry.
Thank you.
Ramsey, I'll make that motion. I don't know if I can say shoulder to shoulder, but we'll make that motion.
No, second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to almost stand shoulder to shoulder and a second. No, the motion was well stated. Thank you. Any additional discussion to this? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion
Okay,
carries.
perfect. We will relay that back to the House and Senate leadership, as well as to the outdoor advertising industry. Perfect. Okay, let's jump into the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. Nick, can you just pull up the packet and just go to the page that says plan of attack for December 13th board meeting, or the memo about the board meeting? Mayor Ramsey, do you want to mention the framing about timing, and then we'll jump into the substance?
Yes, I do. Okay, we have 4 weeks until I have to cast a vote on our behalf at the UEOC meeting on proposed this proposed legislation that was just sent to all of you and that we have just received. We've been working based on the direction that's been given starting back in September, the September board meeting, and every time since. And that's still what we're doing. Today, what I'm hoping for is that we can get additional direction and that we can fine tune even more what our sticking points are and how close we are, and what things we're still going to stick to that haven't been accomplished yet, and really understand where we are. But my goal today is not to leave with direction. We have a sticking point, or we have these 3 things that we want changed, so we oppose this bill. We have 4 weeks, and granted it's the holidays, we've got the holidays, but 4 weeks when it comes to legislation, I mean, we've seen legislation that goes through in 4 seconds, and we're like, who even looked through this, right? 4 weeks is a lot of time to continue to fine tune, and we seem to make progress every time we meet. So what I'm hoping is that you will all be willing to entertain the idea of getting together for a 30-minute meeting on January 5th at lunchtime. It can be over Zoom, or you can join us in person. We didn't get to feed you today, whatever works best for you, but a 1-item additional board meeting so that we can today fine tune the direction for staff and really get granular, fine tune it, take it back, keep working, and then make our final decision on January 5th before I have to cast the vote on January 11th. Because we're getting close, we're not there yet. And I think we have more time. I don't want to make a final decision today knowing we still have 4 weeks ahead of us and everybody else hasn't had a chance to weigh in yet. Now that this draft bill is out there, there's a lot of other people going to be weighing in this space, and there's a lot that can transition. So I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we make a final decision today when there's still 4 weeks out. Is that something everyone would be willing to entertain? I want you to think about that. Now let's talk, and then we'll come back to that at the end. But I'm hopeful that maybe we could do a 1-item agenda January 5th at lunchtime really quick.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. So with that is the framing, let's jump to the memo and the outline. Here's what we hope to do today is we want to walk through the memo that I sent out last night. Thank you, Nick. And the key questions, and recognizing we're limited on time, we're planning to actually do some raise of hand questions so we can get a sense of the room on some of these key concepts, okay? So you can see we sent you the draft in the board packet, and yesterday we went through the draft and we compared it with the draft that we had proposed on November 10th. Everything that was read reflects new language, much of which is an improvement, some of which isn't. And then what was highlighted in yellow are the areas that are still causing concern. We've heard back from the Utah Redevelopment Association. Nick, you can just scan down so you've got 1 and 2 on the screen there. We've heard back from the Utah Redevelopment Association that they are still very concerned about the potential impacts on redevelopment based on how the language is drafted. They're concerned about the definition of the housing density within the housing piece, and they're concerned about the placemaking piece and the definition of payment, which previously had been focused on taxes, but now is on all public dollars. We talked about the politics in multiple meetings. You can see what we've listed here, and then we've also put the prism up as we as staff are going through the bill, reviewing it through the prism. And as you can see, the results going through the prism are still a pretty mixed bag. Nick, go down on the memo. So Mayor Ramsey referenced the timing and her proposal of doing a lunch meeting on January 5th. We'll probably schedule it for an hour rather than 30 minutes, but hopefully we won't need more than that. But that would we can provide feedback both there and actually to the Commission on Housing Affordability. But here's really the key question for us as staff. What changes could be made to the bill that could warrant the league either supporting the bill or not dropping our opposition to the bill? I don't have a formal position yet, but if you were to take a position based on the feedback we've received thus far, it would be to oppose. So are there any other pieces that if we fix this piece and this piece, would we be able to not oppose the bill? Or are we simply opposing the bill regardless? And if so, then we need to bring that message back and strategize accordingly. So let me, Mayor Ramsey, if this works, let me pause for any comments, general comments, while I type a question into the chat box, and we'll start doing a few straw polls with board members in the room. So any board member comments out of the gate here? General, when I say general comments, ideally specifics of what's on this sheet and feedback from your cities on the bill.
President Ramsey, I have a couple of comments on this if I can. Cameron, is your pen have ink in it? Okay.
Thank you, Caldwell.
All right, so we're looking at this this draft bill. I got a couple of things I wanted to talk a little bit about. I'm gonna give you line items on this. So line 248 should probably state repurposing of an existing retail facility, not just a facility. So that gives a little bit of elbow room for a couple of things. One of the big ones that came up with our staff is line 281, a retail facility located entirely with one or more census block groups, which is the area median. You know, we'd like it to go to census block groups. You have census blocks. What I was told earlier today is they have 71,000 census blocks in the state. And this is where I'm going to lean on your legal mind to figure some of this out. We have 2,020 census groups and 710 census tracts. So I'd like that to expand to be census block groups instead of just census blocks. I think would be really beneficial there. Line 248, at least 50% of the developable land or net floor area within the development is dedicated to newer proposed housing units. So part of that goes back to, if you have 10 acres, does 50% of it have to be housing or retail instead of net floor area, which means you're going to have stacked housing or mixed use or anything else. It gives some options instead of just saying, you know, 10 acres, 50% of it needs to be this, 50% needs to be that. What if we did stacked housing in there? And that's, I think, an important consideration. And then lines 230 or 293 through 305 is something I think everybody needs to be concerned about, because it kind of opens the door. And Cam, I'm open to your interpretation of this, but our attorneys are saying it opens the door for any private citizen can come in and sue for enforcement and try to hold the city accountable, whether they're involved in the development or anything else, but they can come in and sue for the enforcement of what's going on with this bill. And I think that opens the door for a lot of people that have no business either in economic development or in the city, just want to grind an axe to come in and go after it. That would typically be a state tax commission kind of a front, where if we weren't meeting the state law and everything else, they could come in and the state would say, yeah, you were out of compliance, and I'm okay with that. But to just have a regular general citizen with an axe to grind to come in and say, hey, no, this wasn't okay. And again, those are lines 293 through 305, where they can sue different cities for the enforcement of some of this. I think that is my attorney related it back to the Texas abortion law, where anybody could come in and sue the city for anything that was just out of a minutia of compliance. And I don't think that's healthy at all. I think that's going to set us all up as cities to get hammered by people that, for whatever reason, have an axe to grind against us. So I think some of that language needs to be considered. And Pam, if you want to talk to Mark Stratford about it, or Mayor Brown from Ogden City, they'd be happy to share that. But those are a couple of the things that we're not very comfortable with right now.
Perfect. Well, and this sets up the questions perfectly, Mayor Caldwell, because there's a lot in this bill that is problematic. And so what we're trying to figure out in our next steps of negotiating is where do we need to focus? Basically, is there a path for us as an organization to not oppose the bill? And if there's not, then we should just acknowledge that. If there is, what needs to be in that path? And, Mayor Caldwell, you've highlighted several things that we were planning to ask about right now. So here's what I'm going to do, Mayor Ramsey. I'm going to I just pressed into the text room question 1, and staff's going to be watching for you to raise your hands here. And we're just going to quickly give you a chance to chime in here. This is not an official vote. I confirmed with Roger, we're okay, but this is just like the feeling in the room of these specific questions, and a couple of them are what Mayor Caldwell referenced. So either raise your hand. I think it's actually be easier if we just have you raise your hand on the screen, and then we'll just talk through them. Does that work, Justin, for keeping track? So the question number 1, can we live with the premise that the state should further limit the use of public dollars for retail development? This really is the underlying issue. We've been negotiating in the maybe space, in part because the league board, several of you are new since the board gave us that direction. League board at the conference basically put us in the maybe space. And so we're, Mayor Ramsey and league staff want to confirm that we're still in the maybe space. So question 1, if you are a yes, we can live with the premise of further limiting, as long as we have better definitions of what that means. Raise your hand on the screen, and then when I say your name, you can take it down. That way I make sure we count correctly. Okay, so raise your hand if you're in that yes, the yes space. Okay, so I've got Mayor Mendenhall, Mayor Silverstream, Mayor Niehaus, Mayor Wilson Edwards, Councilmember Egbert, Mayor Ramsey, Mayor Kafusi, Councilmember McKay, Mayor Bierman, Mayor Lanhard. Okay, and I don't see any other hands. Okay.
Did you say Mayor Daines and Mayor Randall? Mayor Monson?
Well, I didn't see their hands up. So I was just naming the ones for whom I saw hands up.
Okay.
So I'm checking again to make sure I didn't miss any hands. Okay, how many of you are in the maybe space? So if you already voted yes, then you need not raise your hand, but if you're in the maybe space, so not totally comfortable with yes, but in the maybe space. Mayor Daines,
Will you put me in the maybe? This is Miley.
yep. Yeah,
And
the
I
yes and the maybe they overlap, but they're not necessarily the same. They're
Yeah, I
Caldwell.
didn't really realize we had that option of
Nope.
maybe.
I'm all about wiggle room, so I'm there with you. Mayor Caldwell, Councilmember Malkovich, Carson, are you raising your hand too? That was a joke. You don't have to answer that. And okay, I think that's
And I
everybody.
asked for clarification from Mayor Daines. I thought her name was up with yes, and so I'm not certain. I'm sorry. Mayor Daines.
I'm sorry, I meant to be a maybe. Thanks for clarifying.
No, so the fact of the matter is the majority of the board members are still in the yes and maybe space. Because ultimately, yes really does mean maybe, because it's only yes if it's working. So now we're going to get to, yes, exactly, Councilmember Egbert, it really depends. Yes, welcome to my life the last 4 months. I've been in the defense space. So here comes question number 2. Jason Birmingham put a question in, but that's not the question I'm asking right now. Question number 2 is, I'm typing it in right now, but it deals with the workable the housing threshold. So give me 1 second. It'll be easier if I just type it quickly. Okay, question number 2. Can we live with the housing exception? And just to make sure we're on the same page, what this means before you raise your hand, what the concept is, if you as a city are going to use retail incentives for a project, if there's housing as part of that project, all retail incentives are still permitted. Okay. Right now, the standard is unworkable based on what we've heard back from the RDA Association, commercial developers, and the like. But if we can get to a workable and attainable standard, does that move the needle for us? Is that something that would influence our position? Yes or no? So politically, this has actually been one of the primary focuses of Representative Schultz. You'll see Nick still has the memo on the screen where I've highlighted that Representative Schultz is open to scaling back the bill if we offer something meaningful in housing production. Representative Schultz also said he wanted to put 50-50 back on the table if there wasn't anything on housing. So just as that piece, if we can get this piece to where it's something that's workable, does that move the needle for us? Yes or no? So if you are a yes, raise your hand on the screen. Okay, so when I say your name, then you're clear. Justin, I hope you're writing all this down because you're on the hook. Mayor Niehaus, Mayor Silvestrini, Mayor Randall, Councilmember Egbert, Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Malkovich, Mayor Ramsey. Let's see. Mayor Bierman, Mayor Lenhard. Okay, I think I got everybody whose hands I saw.
I'm in, Cameron.
Let me ask for no. How many of you feel like even if the housing piece was workable, it still wouldn't move the needle for us? Councilmember Kay, I see you raised your hand, but I think that was for a question, right?
That was, I vote yes on that.
Oh, you did? Okay, so Justin, make sure to note that. So really what we're trying to do, we're trying to kind of define the sandbox here in a little more detail so we can prioritize as we're working on this. So those of you who are no, and then Mayor Mendenhall, I'll come back to your question. So those of you who are no, raise your hands, who are board members. So Mayor Mendenhall, is that a no on getting the housing piece? Mayor Wilson-Edwards, Councilmember Bradshaw, Mayor Kafusi, Mayor Shepherd. Okay. Okay. So that one was a tighter vote, or not a vote, sorry, Roger. That was a tighter read of the room, but that's helpful to know. So let me hit Mayor Mendenhall's question, and then I'll hit Mayor Ramsey's question. So how does this work for industrial areas with box entities like Amazon? That was actually a primary focus of our deliberation meeting last week, because the language then and the language before you right now would actually still allow for incentives for warehouses and distribution facilities, because the retail component, the point of sale retail component would fit within the ancillary definition. So it's the ancillary issue came up in our last board meeting, where Danes brought it up with respect to Gosler Foods, but the current definition of the ancillary retail would still allow for incentives for those warehouse pieces. Mayor,
Can I try to understand
questions there?
Cam? So let's say like backcountry, not in Salt Lake City,
right?
Major warehouse in the west part of the valley. They have an upfront, you can walk in to their retail counter you're saying that that is considered an ancillary use, so they don't fall under the retail.
Incentive exception as of now, yes.
Okay,
Yep, because of the ancillary piece. Okay, so Councilmember Bradshaw, workable is so broad. True. The reason that language originated about the housing piece was to try to incentivize mixed use developments. So in other words, if cities were going to consider retail incentives, realize the retail incentives for mixed use developments where housing was a piece of the development. And so again, the thresholds in there right now are unworkable, but this Mayor Ramsey gets to your piece here is that all of the retail incentives would be on the table to redevelop a Provo town center, so long as housing was a piece of that mixed use development. But if you were simply doing a retail incentive that for a standalone store that doesn't have any housing with it, then you would be subject to the other requirements. So anyhow, that gets to your point about whether housing's allowed there, but it's trying to incentivize mixed use developments with housing and trying to get to the implementation of the Wasatch Choice vision.
Cam, so like housing somewhere else, like if they engaged in housing somewhere else, that wouldn't count?
So right now, their concept would be that if you had housing in this part of the city, I don't know if you can see my hand, but this part of the city, and you were doing the retail center or in this part of the city, that housing wouldn't count. But if you were doing some sort of mixed use project where housing was a part of the project, and you essentially would get credit for that housing as part of the retail project, and therefore you could use any of your retail incentives. So the whole purpose is to try to incentivize housing development. I look at like Main Street or State Street in Clearfield, for example. You've seen a lot of new housing that's popping up through that area. And so if Clearfield designated that area, and you could still use your retail incentives because you had housing as a piece of it. But if you were simply using retail incentives just for the retail piece, that would not fit in the housing exception.
Just imagine for a second if there was like a whole bank of apartments above a Walmart.
But
So you are,
but in Moab, it would have like a red rock, framing, and in Park City it would have timber. Yeah.
so
Well,
to
Walmart
Councilmember
won't come
Egbert's
to Moab,
point,
so.
right, to Councilmember Egbert's point, the weeds they're getting into is basically saying like, here's the new rule of how you can use these retail incentives. Now, what Representative Schultz told us last week, he said, we go back to the league proposal that you as a board provided us the direction during the annual convention. He said, it would be much easier for me to pass a bill that just tightens the already existing restrictions on tax incentives for retail. That is already in the law. You cannot use sales tax dollars currently to directly incentivize big box retail. That's current law, has been for 17
for a while.
Yeah, 17 years now. So he said, if all we're doing is kind of expanding that, the focus, he said, that's easier for me to pass, but I need to see something meaningful from the League on Housing, and I want to put 50-50 back on the table. And set aside the 50-50 piece, we are sitting down with his staff tomorrow to talk through SB 34 plus, which the Commission on Housing Affordability considered in concept form officially a couple of days ago, and have a final bill out in the next few days. But that's his offer to us right now, is scale back the bill, who wants to see something more meaningful on the housing production side. So Kate, I see, or Councilmember Bradshaw, I see your point for small redevelopment projects. You're right, it is hard to make housing part of that project specifically. But one thing we had discussed on the definition phase was being able to have a larger project area that could encompass say, the housing that's adjacent to the specific project, or the specific development that's part of the overall project area. Okay, any other, Justin, is there anything else we need on the housing front before I move to the next question?
No, I don't think so, not on housing.
Okay, I'm gonna write question number 3 here. Justin, as I write question number 3, will you give the background about where we're at on the placemaking discussions?
Yeah, so placemaking has been interesting. When we went to meet with Schultz and with some other staffers last week, we came with a couple of different definitions of placemaking. You can see from the bill that we currently have that neither of those definitions made it into there. There's nothing in there that talks about placemaking. There are some things about Main Street projects and other things, but it was kind of fuzzy, and they weren't sure how to deal with placemaking. That's something that we're really trying to create, that we're trying to get in there. But from their perspective, I think at this point, they haven't liked the definition that we've brought yet. And one of the things that we heard from last week is they think none of these exceptions exist in a vacuum. So they think that most of the things that would fall under placemaking probably fall under some other exception that's already there. We don't think that's completely true. But placemaking is still something that we're having to work through with them. It's one of the big things we brought up. They've acknowledged there's some importance there, but they've also shown, as you can see from the draft, they haven't brought up a definition to completely encapsulate that yet.
With that as the background, Nick, will you pull the memo back up that has the compare and contrast? Okay, perfect. So we're going to come back to the pieces in yellow on the incentive and definition of retail. Nick, keep going down. Keep going down. We talked about the excuse. Okay, keep going down. Stop. Okay, so on the placemaking side, the bill now includes language about historic area. Well, it now includes language about renovation. Now includes language about ZAP and RAP recipients and environmental costs. So the language still doesn't work in several of these, but the concepts are now in the bill. Our question number 3, this is not a hand raise, but are there any other placemaking concepts that you as a board consider to be quote unquote must-haves in the bill? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to go category by category to see what it is that we need to be negotiating for. So Nick, go down a little bit further. The items that have been discussed in board meetings in the past, keep going down to the next page, please. So here are additional exceptions that little broader than placemaking, but are additional exceptions. And then go down one more, please. Okay, go back up. There's a column. Yep, there it is. Other exceptions. So there are, and these are some of the other things that are currently not in the bill. Are there any other placemaking concepts or other exceptions that you as a board consider to be must-haves in the bill? And if there are, either raise your hand and say so, or put it in the chat. So let's do Councilmember Malkovich, and then I'll get to Mayor Mendenhall.
We kind of went by it kind of quickly, but did we just, I know at one time we were talking about it being based on the class of county. Is that now definitely class of city? Because there are some small cities in larger counties that, that it's just really difficult. So I would think that the exceptions would be on class of city.
So we have brought that forward unsuccessfully thus far. Right now, the only exception related to size is for counties of the 5th and 6th class and the municipalities therein.
So small cities are just getting cut out of the discussion if you live in a larger county.
So this is something I want to make sure we're clear about. You can, it's, when we say cut out of the discussion, you would not be able to use retail incentives directly for retail unless you meet one of these exceptions. So one of the exceptions could be that you have a housing component. One exception could be that you have that it's, you know, redevelopment project. I mean, that's the whole point of the exceptions, is that yes, you know, Malkovich City as a small city, or Woodland Hills as a small city, could not use the tool unless you met one of the exceptions. But then there are several exceptions that you would look at.
And was
this
there
gets back to the question I asked at the beginning of the yes, maybe, no on the premise, because the whole premise that the governor's office and House leadership have been presenting has been, we want to scale back the use of taxpayer dollars to incentivize retail, unless there's a good reason, and here are the list of good reasons.
And was water also on that scroll?
Water conservation, yeah, that's one that they've agreed to. Yeah.
And if I can just put forth a little reminder, this entire bill would have been one sentence long when it was originally presented. No retail tax incentives, period. That was what they wanted. And so now that we have a bill that has exceptions, all this work, it means that all the collective information that we've been bringing forward, the concerns, the things we're working on in our own communities, each of you in your communities, which are different everywhere, we've been able to really make a great deal of progress. We're not there yet, but I just want to remind everybody, this started out as across the board nothing, and we've got it to this point. So your feedback here in this space is helpful. You know, what are we still missing on this? We've made a great deal of progress so far, even though we're not there. Your input is critical because it's what's helping us get there.
Cam?
Yeah, go ahead, Roger, and then I'll come back to Mayor Mendenhall.
I was going to say, there's been a lot of point of using the word discussion and process, but I think it's important to know there has not been a process here. This is a subcommittee of a committee who's basically been Representative Schultz committee. We've been the only player in the room, us in the governor's office. The public in any sense has not been engaged somehow. And it's only because of our insistence that there's even a bill out to talk about today. And so one of the concerns here is the process has been troubling here in terms of broad input. There's a lot of players that have basically been excluded from this.
Yeah, amen, Roger.
If I may, that's why I didn't want us to make a final decision.
Yeah.
Today. Can we support this or do we oppose it? Because it's now time that other people are going to weigh in. And this is going to, like all legislation, morph hour by hour between now and January 11th for that very reason, because now other stakeholders are going to be entering the game. And they should all thank us for getting it to the point we're at.
Right.
Mayor Mendenhall, you know, you hit the nail on the head. There's no way to bring forward all the concepts we need to have in our tool belts, can anticipate future opportunities and needs. And that does come back to the underlying premise question of, is there any bill in this space that we would not oppose? And what we're trying to figure out as staff is there a framework within this space that we would not oppose? So based on the straw poll earlier in the meeting, recognizing that it was a broad question, but it seems like the general direction is to still try to make the bill more workable, but we're trying to figure out the exact priorities now of what are the must-haves versus what are the lines in the sand. When we've emailed out to both board members and to league members trying to get feedback, we've heard from Carson. How many survey responses did we get?
17.
17. Yeah. which also makes it tricky because it feels like we have incomplete information because of the lack of the direct feedback. Any other?
So Cameron, this is Jeff. You know, I've had some other conversations with Mayor Ramsey and various other associations that we have. we see each other a lot, but one of the things that she said repeatedly is kind of like if we, I mean, frankly, she said it already that this bill would be one sentence if not for our engagement. And I guess my question in terms of trying to frame our position on this bill, you know, I think when we really get back to it, we're all maybes, right? I mean, none of us are going to support this unless it gets to a place where we can, you know, live with parts of it. And there are definitely parts of it that are still unacceptable. But and maybe this is a question for you, Don. You know, I mean, I'm concerned. I guess my concern is if we don't sign on to something, are they going to go back to the one sentence bill, do you think? Or do you think we've made inroads with these discussions where if we don't support something, we'll still get something that is at least better than nothing?
I can tell you my guess, and Cam, you know, you can weigh in and tell us what you think. You've been doing this a lot longer than I have in this, working this close with them, but this isn't my first rodeo at the legislative session and working on legislation. I've done this for a lot of years, even before I was mayor. And so if I had to guess, because we have others who are going to come into this space and enter this discussion now, I think it's going to strengthen some of the points that we've brought out. But I do think that the reaction that will probably come from Representative Schultz and some of the leadership in the legislature and some of the others, some from the governor's office, will probably be, we worked in good faith with the league. We have agreed to all these things that they brought to the table. And if you're going to still oppose us, too bad. And I don't think we'll get everything we have here. That's my guess. In fact, I would bet the farm on it. So that's my guess. It's still, we can go to battle. We can take this and we can say we oppose it. We're going to go to battle and list other, you know, stakeholders and try to get their support. But when you take into account who's really pushing this and whose plan it is to get this passed through the legislature, I think there's a lot on their side. And we've worked so hard under the direction of the league and the cities to try to get these things in there that obviously need to be in there. These things need to be taken into account. It would have been terrible for the state to have this blanket legislation. But do I think they'll keep all of these things in there just because they should be? We think they should be. We believe as communities they should be. No, I don't. That's my guess. But Cam, you're welcome to say if you think I'm totally off base. But I don't think
I'm going to answer your question by going back to what Roger said a moment ago, and that is there hasn't been a public process yet. So I expect as other entities chime in that the bill is going to continue to morph. So I don't think they could pass a one-line bill. I think we've raised enough questions and issues with the bill that I don't think they could pass a one-line bill. Councilmember Bradshaw, you've got your hand up, and then Mayor Mendenhall.
Thanks, Cam. I don't want to diminish the work, Mayor Ramsey, that you have done in negotiating and that the league staff has done. Having also spent a significant amount of time up at the state capitol, I think they are Representative Schultz will try and use that. We made all these accommodations and you backed away arguments. But I think we have to publicly, quite frankly, flip the argument. We should present a public league draft of the things that can be supported by all cities. We should start from that proper premise and present that idea publicly so that we move that negotiating framework. Threatening to take it back to the 50-50, the private right of action stuff that is just appalling and unworkable. It feels like we are negotiating with somebody who wants us to negotiate with a gun to our head. And I worry that that if we don't remove ourselves from the way they want the negotiations to be conducted, then we will be stuck when we get into the middle of the session with using this draft rather than promoting our draft. Continuing to insist we stay at the table, but instead starting with a new draft would be my suggestion at this point.
I think that's a brilliant idea because as someone mentioned, this is really like this is a one-man show of drafting. This was born in a vacuum, and it's only thanks to the league's work that there's been real discussion about this. But it is impossible for my city and maybe for every one of our cities to be able to list out all of the exemptions or the things that we need to be able to cut into this Swiss cheese legislation that's being proposed. So I think Kate's approach is a great idea. And if the league were writing it, it's almost like flipping the coin over and looking at what are we really trying to solve for and addressing it in a different way. And I have to apologize, I have a hard stop at 2 o'clock, so I'll drop off shortly.
No problem. Let me add one other thing to what Councilor John Mendenhall said. Nick, will you go back up to the top of the compare and contrast? Right there. Stop. Go right there. So you can see ULCT November 10th. That column reflects a draft that we prepared as staff that we took back to the UEOC subgroup. Okay. And we've highlighted the differences between ours and we've now updated it based on December 13th. So we took that draft, the subgroup rejected it, which was unsurprising. But that draft, we believe, is consistent with the direction that you've given us since the late summer. So my thinking, Mayor Ramsey, is this, knowing we're running up against 2 o'clock. I'm curious. I'd like to know if there's anything within that ULCT November 10th column that causes any concern for board members, because if so, like we've already put that on, we put that on the table based on what you've proposed. But we could basically redraft this based on some of the feedback we've gotten today, and then kind of bring that draft back for your consideration, assuming the subgroup will reject it again, but we can at least bring it back for your consideration. It may be dead on arrival, even with the full UEOC, but it does at least highlight the differences in the two approaches. So is there anything in that column, this is the column, the white column throughout here, that causes anyone concerns? And then I'll come to Paul Jerome's comment in a second. This was the memo we emailed out yesterday.
Cam, on the exception mixed use with housing, projects of a certain size must have a housing density of at least 18 units. Do we have what's our definition of projects of a certain size?
Yeah, we actually left that undefined in our draft. And then we were working on this sliding scale concept. Representative Schultz's response was he thought the 50% actually accomplished the sliding scale because the city could determine the developable, or they could determine the area that applied and define the area in a way to hit that 50% threshold. That's not quite how the draft came back, but that's how he had described it. So we were trying to get to a sliding scale, recognizing that what housing density makes sense in an urban core different than in a rapidly growing suburb. But
so my next question to Cam is, did this ever get drafted in bill form, or was it only drafted in kind of a chart form?
We juxtaposed it onto the UEOC draft. So it was not a bill form, it was not a chart, right?
Right. The first bill that's been drafted at all is the one that we just sent to everybody yesterday. But they do, it's close to that, and it is our own version of this, our own proposal for this.
I have a question, Kim.
So before I said I would get to Paul Jerome's point, and so let me do that first. So Paul Jerome, I invited him to the board meeting today. He's the city manager of Eagle Mountain. The Eagle Mountain's been very concerned about potential changes to retail incentives as a fast-growing city, and they use a method that is pretty comparable or pretty common in fast-growing cities called first of its kind, where they don't incentivize everything. They incentivize the first grocery store or first of its kind in order to get the economic development gravity in a particular area. We have brought this point up and it's been rejected on multiple occasions, but we brought it up even with the governor's Office of Planning and Budget this morning, and Sophia DeCaro and her team to talk through our concerns about this bill's impact on redevelopment, on fast-growing cities and the like. They were going to take our concerns to the governor himself before Christmas. And so, Paul, we brought that point up specifically. I also want to get to Mayor Shepherd's question about the commercial realtors. So they, to our knowledge, still get to see a bill. We've met with some of them. I'm meeting with Woodbury later this week, trying to figure out that workable definition in the housing space so that you get to the outcome of a practical mixed use. So stay tuned. They've not been at the table, but they've been raising concerns from afar. Jason Birmingham had about the discussions with retailers and other developers, and specific issues around infrastructure and redevelopment costs and the like. There was also a question that Councilmember Bradshaw brought up on the system improvement piece, and this issue we talked about in the past on better defining infrastructure within the bill. The direction that the board gave us at the conference was to actually make sure to not impact system improvements, but a willingness to look at potential restrictions around project improvements. And so that was the origin of that language. Mayor Ramsey, I'm seeing more and more comments pop in here. And so, recognizing that we are coming up on 2 o'clock and there are a couple of things we need to do. Councilmember Malkovich, let's just, since you're here at the office, let's just touch base afterward. And then Councilmember Egbert, I see your piece. So Mayor Ramsey, my first question for you is, would you like a motion right now? Or would you prefer to have us go through feedback from these different questions, and instead of a motion to you, have a motion to staff to essentially build our own draft based on that column in white, the November 10th column, and highlight for the UEOC subgroup the specific areas that are still causing us concern, but recognize that the board at this point has not said no to the underlying concept.
That would be my preferred motion, because I think there's a great deal of work to still take place on this over the next 4 weeks.
Would you like me to restate that then?
If anybody has any questions about it, otherwise, if somebody would like to make a motion. Cam, why don't you go ahead and restate it one time, and then.
If I'll restate it and then open to a motion. So this motion would be to not yet take a position on this particular draft, recognizing that we will meet on January 5th to take a motion to take a motion on whatever draft is coming before the UEOC, so that Mayor Ramsey knows. Okay, so you will not give her that specific direction.
Cam, I'll make that motion.
Okay, and then the additional piece direction to staff. But let's do a motion first on the Mayor Ramsey piece.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second as well. I won't be.
Whatever. You stop that.
Okay,
Okay.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this first motion, please say aye.
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 That just gives us direction, right? It's not, this isn't official policy, but it gives us direction, and I want to hear where we're at. Anybody opposed to that? Thank you.
Okay, then the second piece of this is that we'll take what is that third column. So Nick, you just go back up to the top so people can see it. ULCT November 10th column. We've already have a draft of that that's been rejected, but we will build off of that based on the feedback you were giving us today. We will, so if there's anything that concerns people in that column, please email us. Mayor Caldwell, please forward Mark Stratford's comments. And even though there are a lot of moving parts here, the more feedback the better. So we had 3 different people from Provo fill out our survey, and that was great because we got a lot of good information. So that is just fine by us. We'll send that survey link out in a follow-up email to the board to just get more feedback. But at this point, Mayor Ramsey, what I'm still hearing is that we as staff will draft based on that November 10th concept, highlight specifically the issues we've talked about today that are still lines in the sand for us as an organization, but say, here's, if we want to get to yes with something we can live with, this is what it has to look like. And then we'll have that draft for you on January 5th, and we'll take it to the UEOC subgroup. Again, I expect it'll be rejected there, but it will at least give us that alternative.
Well, and hopefully, once it's rejected there, if it is rejected there, we'll still have some opportunity to say, okay, what is it that that they're stuck on? I mean, this is the process. We'll see. Yeah.
So so someone want to make that motion?
The motion to draft a league bill.
Yeah, with all the caveats.
Yeah, using all the concepts that we've been working on.
You need not repeat it word for word.
That is my motion.
I'll second that one.
Yeah, I'll second it too.
Okay, all in favor of that unofficially voting, just so we get your feedback, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to that route?
Okay, then my last question, Mayor Ramsey, is this. Representative Schultz did say he would look at scaling back his bill if there was something meaningful on housing. We're going to talk SB 34 plus with him tomorrow, or with his staff tomorrow. But I would like to know, does the board support us pursuing alternatives on that housing front? In other words, is it more important to hold the line on retail incentives and potentially see a bill that we may not like in the housing space in order to preserve the retail incentives? Do you want us to explore that option as well?
Well, I have heard from a couple of our board members. I've heard from 3 that they have some housing ideas. I mean, I know Draper said they were very supportive of exploring additional housing ideas. Vineyard said that, and Kate Bradshaw. Kate, I understand you also have some thoughts on an additional housing idea that we could explore. So I've heard from a few that way. Does anybody else have? Yeah, I thought that too. I thought, Cam, I'm not sure that everybody maybe remembers what SB 34 plus means.
Right, and we ran out of time to really get to it, but the slides we sent yesterday, the last couple of slides around moderate income housing plans, that originated with SB 34 plus, and the concept that we've presented to the LPC and others. And the gist of it is this, that the moderate income housing plan requirements would change to have more of a focus on the implementation, and you would tie the eligibility to local match part 2 to whether you are implementing your moderate income housing plans. So in order to be eligible for those dollars, as well as for state economic development incentives, and then changing the reporting requirements around SB 34 plus. Now, it doesn't go as far right now as what Representative Schultz wants to, which is why we're meeting with the staff tomorrow. We've already SB 34 plus is already a ULCT suggested bill. So we've already put that on the table through the Commission on Housing Affordability. They've already considered the concepts. We're just waiting for the draft of it.
So Cam, can I understand this better? Are you suggesting that we break housing and retail incentives apart and that housing falls in that SB 34 plus concept bill we're supporting, and then the November 10th retail incentives bill is a second bill? So instead of Schultz's idea of putting them together, we're suggesting two standalone things.
Right, because the scale back of the retail incentives bill would basically just take the current law and state law of no sales tax for big boxes and would basically expand that. So, no tax incentives for big boxes. So more than just sales tax, it would be the other tax payments and direct tax payments. That was the direction the league board gave us, and the convention was to keep the focus on big boxes, car dealerships, and the like. If we say that's the line we're not crossing, there will be an expectation that there's something bigger on housing. And at this point, I don't think SB 34 plus, I don't think that's far enough for Representative Schultz, but we hope to convince him that it will be. If not, we may need to come back and reconsider additional enhancements to SB 34 plus.
Cameron, can I ask you a question about that? So in our central business district, we've had a ton of apartments come in and take over retail spaces and everything else. And one of the issues we have with that is we have a narrowly defined commercial district downtown. And so on commercial projects, whether they're office, retail, or anything else, you get 100% of the property tax that comes in on that. On residential projects, you get 55%. So when we see all these residential projects kind of coming into our small little commercial central business district, it's a hard thing to say, yeah, we're going to really incentivize more housing in our CBD because it's narrowly defined. And so, what are the conversations with that? Because, Ogden and Weber County, we take the lion's share of every one of those projects that come in, and they're not done to great standards. And we have some frustration about that. And we feel some pushback from the legislature because nobody else in Weber County is going to accept those higher density housing projects around because of some of that. And one of the things we've talked about for a long time is, are there conversations to be had about having a truth in taxation for anything? Can you hold it level? That's been on the table, and we've talked about that for probably the last 5 years. I'm just curious if they're taking it off the table and if that's not a part of the conversation anymore.
So Mayor, it has been part of the conversation. Justin and I have raised it on several occasions, and we've raised it in the context of changing the 55% for purposes of multifamily housing and try it because that would change the incentive if you could tax that at a higher rate. We've also talked truth in taxation, and at this point, there's no real appetite in leadership to do either one, even though they acknowledge, I think for the first time, they've actually acknowledged that is an issue, but they weren't willing at this point to make any changes on that piece. Part of the reason that they have put the nexus of the housing development with retail incentives is actually to try to reward an Ogden and say, look, Ogden is already planning for housing in your downtown area. So therefore, because you have housing as part of the development, you'd still have all of the retail incentives to utilize. Whereas if you were in an area that was not including housing in your developments, then you'd be restricted. And Representative Schultz on several occasions has praised Ogden, and I don't want to do anything that has a negative impact on Ogden City. He would say, I'm trying to incentivize smarter growth and the Wasatch Choice implementation, which you see in spades in Ogden.
That's kind of where because I know where you live, so I can be at his doorstep.
Yep, and you may need to.
I'm just curious because those are conversations we've had in the last couple of years. Like, it's really hard to do that in your central business district and allow a bunch of cheap apartments to go up, and knowing that there's not a whole lot you can do about that. And that's what some of this conversation seems to lean to. You can't put any restrictions on that. And, you know, from my perspective, a lot of the higher density housing that's coming into our central business district is, it's got a 8 to 10 year life cycle, and then they're just be really difficult to manage for public safety and everything else, because they're going to kind of fall apart and people don't take care of that. So we want to protect our central business district and bring more business downtown and everything else. It's a hard conversation for me to swallow.
Right. So Srinivasan, and then Mayor Rams, I know we're over time. I'll be 1 minute on other items.
I'm sorry, I'll try to be brief, but I have a lot of thoughts about this. You know, I know we're dealing with a train that has kind of left the station with respect to leadership's ideas about trying to, you know, tweak something with respect to retail incentives. And, you know, this started out with, let's change the sales tax formula because we have to re-incentivize this. And now we're moving toward, let's, you know, kill the idea of using, you know, retail incentives that can benefit, you know, even the players that are actually doing good in this space and building housing, you know. And I wish we could redirect this conversation to, like, let's focus on the problem that we have, which is creating housing, and let's do things that actually encourage that. Let's look at that SB 34 plus. Let's incentivize the players that are doing good, that are actually building housing. And, you know, let's try carrots before we turn to sticks. We haven't ever tried the carrots. You know, let's give something to the cities that are building housing along transit and realizing the vision of West Side Choice 2050. And, you know, they've done a little bit of that with respect to some of the ARPA money and the Hemrick grant and things like that. But I wish we could turn them from the whole conversation toward, let's look at the problem that we really have. Let's directly focus on that, and not on these ancillary things where there are all these unintended consequences and difficult things to predict, and you're tying people's hands on things, and you're actually blocking the good actors from being able to continue to do the things that they need to do to make these projects work. You know, I don't know if you can get to that. I know that requires kind of a mental shift with respect to the way they're thinking about this problem. But I would, in terms of direction to staff, I would emphasize what we're offering up with SB 34 plus, that we want to hold our members accountable to this, and we want to incentivize the good actors so that we can bring on the ones that are more, you know, recalcitrant with incentives. That's going to work a lot better than trying to tie our hands on things that frankly just are going to, you know, they're going to create unintended consequences, and that's not what they should be. They should be worried about that.
That sounded like a motion, and we do still have a quorum.
I'll make a motion. You can distill that to a motion.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Perfect.
Okay. Again, this is an unofficial vote. It's just for direction, but all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to it? Okay.
Okay. All right, that's very helpful. The last items we need action on before people leave, and we're right. We still have a quorum, so just Nick, can you share the agenda? As he's doing that, I want to remind the board of one of our strategic goals, that is to, so Nick, go all the way back to the top of the agenda, please, which is to maximize our political capital at the Capitol, and if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So Nick, go back up just a little bit, so right there, so you can see other legislative priorities, that bullet point, and then scan down a little bit more. So you can see everything under the priority topics. This is everything that we've been working on to date. And everything's not even the right term because there are several items that we forgot, but they're scanned down next, so you can see it goes on 2 pages, perfect. So if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority, and you can see the meaty priority list that at the local officials day board meeting, we plan to try to prioritize these so we know where to best spend our political capital. Because as you can see, there are a lot of big issues, all of which impact cities in a very major way. Some of these are bills that we brought forward, such as land use and water planning, SB 34 plus, Garrity fix, etc. Nick, go down a little bit. Now just go down to executive director report. We need you to authorize us to accept, and we're very excited about this. Nick, will you just click on that link? The public asset grant information. So Mayor Wilson Edwards, this is in large part due to comments you made at a board meeting a couple of years ago. We had Joe Minicozy come speak to the league conference about public asset management. He came and spoke to you as a board. The board said, we're really interested in this, but we need the technical assistance to do it, and it's not cheap. We've been carrying on that dialogue with different stakeholders, and we just received this grant of $500,000 to work with communities to help them, and this will mostly be pass-through money, but to help communities do public asset management. For those of you who aren't familiar with that term, would be a city-owned property that's being underutilized that could turn into some type of development to meet a need in your community, whether that's housing or anything else. So we need your vote to authorize us to receive this money, and then we can start working with Intermountain on how to spend it. You can see WFRC is also receiving a grant. So this is from Intermountain and also through our partnership with Zions Bank. So I'll look for that motion, Mayor Ramsey.
You actually need a vote to receive money?
Yeah, of this
Okay,
size.
I'll make that vote.
Yeah, of this magnitude.
Okay, we've got a motion and we've got one by Kate Bradshaw as well. So one of you can have the motion, one of you can have the second. I have to log off in 3 minutes.
I'll take the second on that, and I'll vote aye, obviously.
Okay, all in favor of accepting this money, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. If I have to hang up and we're not done, I'm going to ask Mayor Silverini to close this up. I have someone coming to pick me up for another meeting, and they're probably already here. So I only have to.
Mayor Ramsey, let me just say this. We have to have a conversation in a future board meeting about a partnership with the Prosecutors Association. They're looking to partner with us, and potentially that will be part of our membership dues conversation this spring. So just be aware of that. And then last but not least, Mayor Bierman, I'll certainly miss our hikes together talking policy. Mayor Niehaus, the first time we met was at the Capitol, where you wanted to know everything there was about the legislature. Mayor Wilson Edwards, the first time we met was when you wanted a deep dive on wildland fire policy. And Mayor Arvey has been a terrific treasurer, staying on top of dollars and cents. Mayor Castleton has been a great advocate for rural Utah, and I appreciate his perspectives. And Councilmember Smith has been terrific to work with his dual hats as a fire chief and mayor. And I certainly enjoyed our time at dinner down at the spring conference. So thank you for your service to the league and to your communities. We will miss you, and everybody else. I just want to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and most importantly, go Utes. Mayor Ramsey, I'll turn it to you.
Hey, Cameron, one of the things that I think we didn't get to the appointment of the treasurer. I just noticed that with
Mayor
respect.
Silvestrini, I was going to ask for a motion to table that until January.
All right, then
Well,
that's.
we still have a quorum, and the treasurer is a non-voting member of the board, and we don't want to be without a treasurer when the new year starts.
Okay, so if you've got the recommendation and can bring it forward, and we can, if it's a long deliberation, we're going to have to table it. If not, go ahead, Mayor.
So I'm going to recommend Brett Hales, who's the incoming mayor-elect of Murray. He's been on their council for a while, and he has a financial background, and I know staff has interviewed him about this, and he's willing to do it.
And we have to have someone within 30 miles of the league office be the treasurer for our bylaws.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mayor-elect Brett Hales to, Kate's got the motion, I'll do the second.
Okay, we've got a motion, thank you, by Kate Bradshaw and a second by Mayor Silvestrini on Mayor-elect Brett Hales to become our treasurer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Well done. Thank you again to all of you. We really will miss you who aren't going to be here with us anymore, but we hope that you'll come say hi, come see us, and look forward to, I hope, a lifelong friendship with all of you. And I have a hard time imagining this will be the last time that you'll ever hike with Mayor Bierman or talk policy ever. I just don't think that's going to be a thing. I just think, so anyway, thank you to all of you, and
Motion to adjourn for happy holidays.
Happy
you.
holidays, y'all. I'll second that,
Bye.
Jeff.
Second.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy holidays.